It was the morning of December 30th, and I was already drowning in a pile of reports. My office in downtown New York had its usual buzz, phones ringing, assistants rushing, and the faint aroma of coffee lingering in the air, but I had barely noticed any of it. All I could think about was one email that had landed in my inbox at 7:02 a.m. from Peter Lancaster, CEO. Subject, skip New Year's, you're an embarrassment. I stared at it, my coffee halfway to my lips. My heart skipped a beat. Embarrassment? Me? Peter Lancaster, the CEO of one of the most successful tech firms in Manhattan, had always been demanding, exacting, and notoriously blunt. I had worked closely with him for over a year as his executive assistant, and while I respected his brilliance, I also knew he had no filter. Still, this was something else. I opened the email and read the short note. Attending New Year's with you is a disaster waiting to happen. Don't come. You'll embarrass yourself. And me. Peter. I blinked. Twice. Then laughed nervously, spilling half my coffee on the stack of reports. For weeks, Peter had been pushing me to attend the company's New Year's gala. It was one of those ultra-exclusive events, the kind that CEOs use to network with investors, partners, and media influencers. I had refused politely, citing work commitments. Apparently, refusal was now seen as outright rebellion. I muttered under my breath, embarrassment? Really, Peter? My assistant Jenna peeked in. Is everything okay? I waved the email. Just a little constructive criticism from our fearless leader. Jenna's eyes widened. Ouch. That's harsh. I shrugged. It's Peter. You get used to it, or cry in the bathroom. Both are viable options. I tried to focus on work, but the email gnawed at me. Embarrassment, Peter, New Year's, and then the memory of our last meeting flashed in my mind. A tense boardroom discussion where I had questioned one of his proposals. His glare had made me physically shrink in my chair. Now that look, combined with the email, made me anxious. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of conference calls and presentations, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, and I was right. Around 10:30 a.m., the boardroom door opened without knocking. My stomach sank. Peter's fiancée, a woman I had only heard about in passing, Vanessa Quinn, walked in, impeccably dressed in a navy blazer and pencil skirt, hair perfectly styled, and an expression that could rival any Wall Street executive in intimidation. Good morning, she said smoothly, her eyes locking on mine. Good morning, I replied, trying to hide my surprise. Vanessa took a seat at the head of the table, as if she had been here 100 times before. I glanced at Peter's office next door. He wasn't there yet. You must be Emily? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Yes, I said stiffly. Emily Carter, executive assistant. She smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. I've heard so much about you. Peter talks a lot. My stomach tightened. This is going to be interesting. Vanessa didn't waste time on pleasantries. She pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through reports, analyzing charts and making notes. I tried to follow along, contributing where I could, but her presence was intense. You've done a good job keeping things organized, Vanessa said after a while, glancing at me. But I think some of these processes could be streamlined. Peter tends to rely too heavily on his assistants. That's where you come in. Right, Emily? I nodded, unsure if she was complimenting me or sizing me up. She looked at me with a piercing gaze. I'm going to be working closely with Peter over the next few weeks, and I expect you to assist me professionally. Understood? Yes, I said. My pulse quickened. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and tapped a pen on the table. Good. Because if you can't handle this, Peter will find someone who can. And I don't like chaos, Emily. It's embarrassing. Just then, Peter walked in, his usual calm and composed demeanor in place, though his eyes flicked between Vanessa and me.
Ah, I see you've met, he said casually. Emily, Vanessa.
Vanessa didn't stand. She just gave him a nod and turned back to the reports. Peter smirked at me. Don't worry, Emily. You're safe. For now, safe. That word did nothing to calm my nerves. I spent the next hour taking notes, answering questions, and silently wondering how I had gone from being his trusted assistant to someone under the microscope of both Peter and his fiancée. After the boardroom meeting, I went back to my desk, feeling the tension slowly drain from my shoulders. I opened my email and found another message from Peter. Vanessa will be shadowing you for the next few weeks. Treat her professionally. This is for the best. P. I stared at the screen. The best for who? I muttered. Jenna popped her head into my office again. New year, new chaos? I laughed nervously. Apparently yes, and it's arriving early. Little did I know, this early chaos would soon escalate far beyond emails, boardrooms, and subtle judgments. Because Vanessa wasn't just here for reports. She was here for Peter. And she was about to make it clear, in her own way, that I wasn't the only person under scrutiny. By the time I left the office that evening, my mind was buzzing with possibilities. I had always prided myself on keeping a professional distance from Peter's personal life, but with Vanessa in the picture, that boundary blurred immediately, and I had a sinking feeling that this New Year's was going to be unforgettable. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, hoping to get ahead of the whirlwind I knew was coming. But no matter how early I came, Vanessa Quinn had already beaten me there. Her heels clicked decisively across the polished floor, echoing through the nearly empty office. She carried a tablet and a leather portfolio, as if they were extensions of her body. Every movement was precise, deliberate, controlled, exactly the opposite of how I operated. "Morning, Emily," she said, giving me a faint, perfectly measured smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I trust you've prepared the reports I requested yesterday?" "Yes," I said, trying to hide my anxiety. "I went through the quarterly forecasts, investor emails, and the project timelines. Everything's ready for your review." Vanessa raised an eyebrow, scanning the pile of folders I had brought to her desk. "Good. Let's see how thorough you are." "I don't like surprises, Emily. They're embarrassing." My stomach twisted. I had barely gotten used to Peter's blunt emails, and now his fiancée was adding a layer of scrutiny that made me feel exposed under a microscope. I reminded myself to breathe. Patience, Emily, patience. As she flipped through the reports, I observed her closely. Vanessa had this unnerving ability to make the simplest actions look like calculated power moves. When she adjusted a fold, or swiped her pen across the paper, it wasn't casual, it was deliberate. And each time, I felt as though she was silently judging not only the quality of my work, but my character. "You've done a fair job here," she said finally, closing the tablet and setting it down carefully. "But I noticed some inconsistencies in your data interpretation. For instance, in the Northeast revenue projections, you rounded down instead of providing exact figures. Do you understand why that's a problem?" "Yes," I replied quickly, my heart pounding. "I thought it would simplify the summary, but I can correct it immediately." She nodded slowly. "Good. Accuracy matters, Emily, especially in front of stakeholders. Mistakes reflect poorly, not just on you, but on Peter. And I assure you, he notices everything." I felt a twinge of irritation, but pushed it down. I had worked with Peter long enough to know that fear mixed with admiration was part of the package. Vanessa, however, was new, and her presence made the stakes feel sharper. Peter arrived mid-morning, walking in with his usual calm and slightly amused expression. When he saw Vanessa seated at the head of the conference table, he smirked at me. "Ah, the dynamic duo is already at work," he said lightly. Vanessa gave him a nod without looking up from the reports. "Morning, Peter. I'm reviewing Emily's work. I expect precision and timeliness, of course." Peter chuckled. "Of course. Emily can handle it." I forced a smile. "I'm doing my best, pet." Er's smirk lingered, and I could feel him silently weighing my reaction to his fiancée's scrutiny. There was always this odd dance with Peter. One moment professional, the next tinged with personal tension that I never quite understood. The meeting that followed was brutal. Vanessa questioned every decision, asked for clarifications that I had thought were unnecessary, and corrected small mistakes that hadn't even seemed significant. Every time I made a note, she leaned over my shoulder, scrutinizing my penmanship and methodology. "Emily," she said at one point, her tone soft but sharp, "I appreciate effort, but I value foresight more. You must anticipate challenges before they arise. Do you understand?" "Yes," I said, swallowing. "I'll work on it." She nodded and moved on to the next report, leaving me with a tight knot in my chest. I had always thrived under Peter's guidance, but Vanessa's presence made me feel like a student again, anxious and tested in ways I hadn't anticipated. By mid-afternoon, I was running on coffee and sheer willpower. Vanessa suggested some improvements in the workflow, and I followed her instructions, hoping to prove myself. Surprisingly, I noticed small moments of genuine collaboration. She wasn't entirely critical. Sometimes she offered advice that actually improved my processes. But every helpful gesture was intertwined with a subtle reminder. She was watching, evaluating, and measuring my every move. During a break, I stepped into the small kitchen to refill my coffee. Jenna, my assistant, hovered nervously nearby. "You're handling Vanessa okay?" she asked. I sighed. "I'm surviving, but she's intense. Peter's fiancée doesn't just observe, she dissects." Jenna laughed softly. "Well, that's her style, and maybe that's why Peter's drawn to her. She challenges him, keeps him sharp, just like you're supposed to." I shook my head. Challenging him is one thing. Being under her microscope all day is another. Jenna gave me a sympathetic smile. "Just remember, you've been handling Peter for over a year. Vanessa's intensity is temporary, or at least manageable." The afternoon passed in a blur of reports, corrections, and tense discussions. Vanessa's presence made every decision feel weighted, every movement scrutinized. By the time the workday ended, I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally. I packed my things slowly, glancing at the clock. Outside, the streets were beginning to fill with people preparing for the upcoming New Year's celebrations. The office buzzed with talk of parties, invitations, and festive plans. I had intended to skip all of it, to keep my focus on work and avoid the potential embarrassment Peter had warned me about. But Vanessa's shadow over the day had planted a seed of unease. Just as I was about to leave, Peter appeared in my office doorway. His expression was unreadable. "Emily," he said, his voice low, "you're coming to the gala tomorrow." I froze. I thought you said—" "Yes," he interrupted. "Ed," with a half smile, "I said I didn't want you to embarrass yourself. But Vanessa insisted you attend. She wants to observe how you handle the board in a high-stakes social setting." I exhaled sharply. "You mean she wants me to prove myself in front of investors and everyone else?" Peter nodded. "Exactly. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Just don't embarrass yourself." I forced a laugh that didn't reach my eyes. "Thanks for the confidence boost." That night, I went home, nerves jangling. I made a mental list of what I needed: my outfit, rehearsing conversation starters, and preparing for Vanessa's critical gaze. Every detail mattered. Every movement could be interpreted as competence or failure. I couldn't sleep. Images of Vanessa in the boardroom, Peter watching, and the looming gala replayed in my mind. I knew one thing for sure. Tomorrow would test everything: my professional skills, my composure, and my ability to navigate the tension between Peter and Vanessa. And I had no idea what other surprises the evening held. The New Year's Eve gala arrived faster than I expected. The city was buzzing with excitement. Lights twinkled on skyscrapers, taxis honked impatiently, and the hum of celebration seeped into every corner. I had spent the entire day preparing, my outfit carefully chosen, my notes memorized, my mind running through every possible scenario of what Vanessa might criticize. As I arrived at the venue, the grandeur of the hotel ballroom hit me. Crystal chandeliers glimmered overhead, Waiters in crisp black uniforms glided across the marble floors, and the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. This wasn't just a gala, it was a stage, and I knew Vanessa intended to watch me perform every step of the way. I spotted Peter first, standing near the entrance in a sleek black tuxedo. His smile was effortless, charming, the kind that made everyone stop and take notice. Behind him, Vanessa lingered, elegantly poised, scanning the room as if she owned it. As soon as our eyes met, Vanessa gave me a subtle nod. It was a silent warning she was watching, judging, evaluating. My stomach tightened. Peter noticed my hesitation. "Relax, Emily," he said, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. "You've got this, just be yourself." I forced a smile. Be yourself. Right, easy to say when the stakes are this high. The first challenge arrived almost immediately. A group of investors, 2 men in tailored suits and 1 woman with a sharp gaze, approached Peter for introductions. Vanessa subtly stepped beside me, giving me a pointed look that clearly said, "Observe and take notes." Peter introduced me formally. "Emily Carter, my executive assistant. She keeps everything running smoothly behind the scenes." The woman investor raised an eyebrow. "Impressive title. I hope she's equally competent under pressure." I swallowed and nodded, extending my hand. I do my best to stay ahead of any challenges and anticipate needs before they arise. Vanessa's E. Yes, narrowed slightly, not in anger but appraisal. I could feel her silently measuring my confidence, my poise, my every gesture. For the next hour, I floated between conversations. Investors asked questions about company strategy, product launches, and timelines. Vanessa shadowed me at every step, occasionally whispering subtle corrections or suggestions. "Adjust your stance, speak slower, make eye contact with both parties, nod more naturally." It was exhausting. My notes felt heavier in my hands, my smile more strained with each interaction. And yet, I began to notice something unexpected. Her feedback, though critical, improved my performance. By the second round of introductions, I felt slightly more confident, navigating questions with precision and composure. Peter noticed too. He gave me a small, approving nod as he passed by. That tiny gesture steadied me more than he could imagine. Midway through the evening, the first real test arrived. A public toast. Vanessa had arranged for me to present a brief summary of recent project successes in front of the gathered crowd. My heart thumped in my chest. This is it, I thought. The moment to either prove myself or embarrass myself. I stepped onto the small stage, notes trembling slightly in my hands. Vanessa stood beside me, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Peter watched from the front row, giving me a reassuring glance. I cleared my throat. "Good evening, everyone. I'm here to provide a brief update on our Q4 progress and upcoming initiatives." The next 10 minutes were a blur. I spoke clearly, referenced numbers accurately, and answered questions with calm professionalism. Vanessa, surprisingly, gave a faint nod of approval at several points. When I finished, the room erupted in polite applause. Relief washed over me in waves. After the toast, Vanessa pulled me aside. "You did well," she said quietly. "Better than I expected." I blinked. "Really?" "Yes," she replied. "You're competent, confident, and adaptable. But remember, your actions here affect how Peter is perceived. That pressure doesn't end tonight." I nodded. Her words, though still precise and a bit intimidating, now carried respect. The evening continued with laughter, dancing, and a mix of networking conversations. Vanessa remained close, observing but not interfering, and I began to feel a subtle shift. The tension that had defined our interactions gradually softened into mutual recognition. Then came the most unexpected moment. Peter's fiancée, usually reserved and professional, approached me with a small smile. "Emily," she said, "I wanted to thank you. You handled tonight with grace and professionalism. I admit, I underestimated you. I felt my cheeks heat. Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that. She nodded. Peter is lucky to have someone like you supporting him. And tonight you've shown why. I exhaled, realizing for the first time that I wasn't just surviving under Vanessa's scrutiny. I was earning her respect. As the clock neared midnight, Peter came to find me. Emily, he said softly, I need to tell you something. I looked up, heart racing. I know I said you'd embarrass yourself. That was unfair. You've done more tonight than I expected. You handled pressure, investors, and Vanessa's unique style. I'm proud. I blinked, unable to form words. Peter, the man whose emails had reduced me to nerves just weeks ago, was genuinely praising me. He smiled. Come with me. Midnight's almost here. On the terrace, overlooking the sparkling city, we watched fireworks begin to erupt across the skyline. Peter's hand brushed against mine. A subtle, almost accidental touch. The energy from earlier in the evening mingled with something new, a recognition, a shared moment beyond the office. Vanessa watched from the other side, her expression softer now. It was clear she had seen everything, the effort, the poise, the quiet determination. And in that glance, I felt an unspoken acknowledgement that I had proven myself not just to Peter but to her as well. As the final fireworks exploded, Peter leaned slightly closer. Happy New Year, Emily, he said, his voice low and steady. I smiled, feeling a surge of relief and confidence. Happy New Year, Peter. And for the first time, I realized the gala hadn't been a trap. It had been a test, and I had passed. The morning after the gala, the office felt different. The city outside glimmered with post-New Year energy, but inside, something quieter lingered. The tension that Vanessa had brought into my life for the past few weeks had shifted. Respect had begun to replace scrutiny, and though she remained meticulous and intense, there was a subtle acknowledgement that I had earned my place. I sipped my coffee at my desk, reviewing notes from the gala. Investors had complimented our team. Several had asked for follow-up meetings, and Vanessa herself had quietly praised my professionalism. I felt lighter, not just relieved, but proud. The first test of this new dynamic arrived sooner than I expected. Vanessa walked into the office with Peter close behind, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Good morning, Emily, she said, placing 1 cup in front of me. Her tone was softer than usual. I wanted to personally thank you for managing the gala so effectively. You handled everything with composure. I blinked. Thank you, Vanessa. That means a lot. Peter leaned casually against the doorframe, smiling. I told you she'd handle it. I smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. This subtle recognition, though understated, was significant. It was proof that I could navigate professional scrutiny and emerge unshaken. Over the next week, Vanessa stayed closely involved in our workflow, but her approach had shifted. She offered suggestions rather than criticisms and asked for my opinion on key decisions. For the first time, I realized that this was no longer about intimidation. It was collaboration. During a late afternoon meeting, she turned to me with her tablet in hand. Emily, I've noticed your strategic insights. They're precise, well thought out. I think you should present some of these ideas to Peter directly. He often overlooks small but critical details. I hesitated, surprised by the praise. Really? You think it's appropriate? Vanessa nodded. Absolutely. Confidence isn't arrogance. You've earned the right to be heard. Peter, who had been observing from the side, raised an eyebrow and gave a small nod of approval. It was as if Vanessa's words carried more weight because she had tested me, and now her acknowledgement validated my abilities in a way Peter rarely did himself. That afternoon, I scheduled a private meeting with Peter to present a new proposal. Vanessa observed silently, taking notes but offering no interference. Emily, Peter began, once we were seated, I want to hear your perspective. Don't hold back. I took a deep breath and walked him through the strategy, highlighting risks, opportunities, and actionable solutions. I noticed Vanessa's eyes occasionally flicker with approval, her pen pausing as she followed my logic. When I finished, Peter leaned back in his chair. "Impressive," he said simply. "You've clearly thought this through. I like it." And then, unexpectedly, Vanessa spoke. "I agree. This is thorough and realistic. It addresses potential pitfalls in a way that I hadn't considered." "Excellent work, Emily." I felt my chest tighten. Respect had never felt so tangible. Both Peter and Vanessa had acknowledged my abilities, not just as an assistant, but as a professional capable of independent thought. That evening, as I walked to my car, Jenna called. "I heard Vanessa complimented you today," she said. Her voice carried a mix of disbelief and excitement. I smiled faintly. "She did. It was unexpected." Jenna laughed. "After all the emails, criticism, and boardroom stress? That's a big deal." I nodded. "It is. And I think this means things are starting to shift. The dynamic is changing." The next challenge arrived midweek. A high-profile investor requested an urgent meeting with Peter, and Vanessa insisted that I prepare the data presentation. Normally, this would have terrified me, but after the gala and the recent acknowledgement, I felt different. I felt capable. I spent the morning organizing files, rehearsing talking points, and anticipating potential questions. When the meeting began, Vanessa stayed close, but this time her presence felt supportive rather than intimidating. I presented confidently, responding to questions with poise and clarity. Peter occasionally added commentary, but for the first time, I felt like an equal contributor. Vanessa nodded discreetly at the end, a faint smile crossing her lips. Later, in the quiet of the office, Vanessa approached me. "Emily," she said, "you've proven yourself not only at the gala but also in high-stakes meetings. I want to acknowledge that. You've earned my respect." "And Peter's," I blinked, caught off guard. "Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that." She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "It's rare for someone to balance professionalism, competence, and composure under pressure like you have. Don't let anyone diminish that, including yourself." I exhaled, feeling the weight of weeks of tension lift. Her words weren't just praise, they were a validation that I belonged in this space, that I was more than the sum of Peter's harsh emails or Vanessa's initial scrutiny. That night I reflected on the past month. The emails, the boardroom scrutiny, the gala, and Vanessa's constant presence had all pushed me to my limits, but they had also revealed something crucial. Resilience, adaptability, and competence are visible to those who pay attention. I realized that Vanessa's initial harshness wasn't personal. It was her way of testing boundaries, establishing respect, and ensuring Peter's world ran smoothly. By surviving and thriving under that scrutiny, I had earned a rare kind of professional validation. The turning point, however, came unexpectedly. A week later, Peter called me into his office, a rare, relaxed smile on his face. "Emily," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I want you to know something. Vanessa has been impressed by your work, and honestly, I've been too." I raised an eyebrow. "Impressed? That's unexpected." Peter shrugged. "You've grown into your role in ways I didn't anticipate. You handled the gala, the investors, and Vanessa's scrutiny without flinching. That's not easy." I felt a swell of pride. "Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that acknowledgement." He nodded. "And just so you know, Vanessa and I agree, you're invaluable. Don't ever forget that." Walking out of his office that evening, I felt a sense of accomplishment I hadn't experienced in months. The professional tension, the personal scrutiny, the stress, it had all culminated in this moment of recognition. Vanessa's fiancé aura, once intimidating, had transformed into a subtle, supportive presence. And Peter's approval, though often understated, now felt genuine and earned. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The New Year's challenge wasn't over, but I knew now that I could face it with confidence, poise, and the knowledge that I had proven myself. The first week of January brought a calm I hadn't anticipated. The New Year's gala was behind us, and yet its lessons lingered. Vanessa's presence in the office no longer felt like scrutiny. It felt like a challenge that had been met, a professional rivalry transformed into mutual respect. Peter's emails, once sharp and intimidating, had softened, reflecting his growing acknowledgement of my capability. I arrived at the office on Monday morning with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt before. The elevator ride up to the 42nd floor felt less stressful, less like walking into a minefield. I was prepared, organized, and confident, ready to tackle any obstacle Vanessa or Peter might present. Vanessa was already at her desk, reviewing quarterly projections with her usual precision. But today, she paused when she saw me enter. "Morning, Emily," she said, with a small, genuine smile. "I hope your new year is off to a good start." "Morning, Vanessa," I replied, returning the smile. "It's been productive so far. How about yours?" She nodded, then glanced at the reports I had prepared. "I reviewed these briefly last night. You've anticipated the potential gaps perfectly." "I'm impressed." I felt a warmth of satisfaction. This wasn't just praise. It was acknowledgement that I had grown, learned, and proven myself. Peter appeared a few minutes later, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Morning, Emily," he said, handing me one. "I've been hearing good things. Vanessa mentioned your initiative on the Q1 planning. Well done." "Thank you, Peter," I said, feeling a sense of validation that extended beyond professional approval. Peter gave me a brief, approving nod. "Keep this momentum. It's exactly why I rely on you." I realized that their acknowledgement was now less about testing me and more about collaboration. The tension that had defined our interactions had eased, replaced by a professional partnership strengthened by mutual respect. Later that morning, Vanessa and I were called into a meeting with a group of investors. This time she allowed me to take the lead entirely. I presented the projections, addressed questions, and navigated their concerns with confidence. Vanessa occasionally interjected with subtle clarifications, but her tone was supportive rather than critical. When the meeting concluded, one of the investors shook my hand. "Impressive work, Emily. You're clearly a key asset to Peter and his team." Vanessa's eyes met mine across the room. A small smile curved her lips. In that moment, I felt a profound shift. Our professional rivalry had evolved into respect and acknowledgement. Back in the office, Vanessa approached me quietly. "Emily, I wanted to say, you handled that brilliantly. Your preparation, confidence, and clarity were exemplary. I underestimated you initially." I smiled, relieved. "Thank you, Vanessa. That means a lot coming from you." She nodded. "Peter is fortunate to have someone like you managing both him and the office. And frankly, I'm glad we found a rhythm. You've earned my respect." The weight of weeks of scrutiny lifted. For the first time, I felt a true sense of professional equality with both Peter and Vanessa. I was no longer merely the executive assistant under observation. I was a valued contributor, recognized for my competence and resilience. That evening, as I left the office, Peter caught up with me in the lobby. The city streets were sparkling with evening lights. A reminder that the year was only just beginning. "Emily," he said, his voice calm but sincere, "I know our start to this month was challenging. I want to apologize for the way I phrased that email before New Year's. It wasn't fair to you." I blinked, surprised. "Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that." He smiled faintly. "You've proven yourself time and again. And Vanessa, she's not easy to impress. That you earned her respect says a lot." I felt a surge of pride. It was a learning experience, and I'm glad it's behind us. Peter nodded. "It is. And just so you know, I trust you completely. Going forward, know that your judgment matters. You're not just managing tasks, you're shaping outcomes." The next week solidified our new dynamic. Vanessa and I coordinated projects seamlessly, our earlier tension replaced by efficient collaboration. Peter's trust was evident in the way he delegated responsibilities and consulted me on critical decisions. One afternoon, as I finalized a high-stakes presentation, Vanessa leaned over my desk. "Emily, I have to admit, your ability to anticipate challenges and provide solutions is remarkable. I feel confident knowing you're handling this alongside me." I smiled. "Thank you, Vanessa. I couldn't have done it without learning from your meticulous approach." She paused, then offered a faint nod. "We make a good team." For the first time, I truly believed it. By mid-January, the office felt lighter, more cohesive. Vanessa, Peter, and I had established a rhythm, one that balanced scrutiny, collaboration, and mutual respect. No longer was I the target of preemptive criticism or anxiety. I was a professional recognized for my skill, intelligence, and poise. Even Jenna noticed the change. "I can't believe the difference in the office," she said one afternoon. "It's like night and day. You've gone from surviving to thriving." I laughed softly. "It's been challenging, but worth it. I've learned a lot, not just about work, but about handling people, pressure, and expectations." The final confirmation came during a team meeting. Peter, Vanessa, and I presented our latest strategy to the board. Everything flowed smoothly, with Vanessa offering insights, Peter guiding discussions, and me leading key points confidently. Afterward, the board members complimented the synergy and professionalism of our team. Peter leaned toward me privately as we left the room. "Emily, you've exceeded every expectation. I hope you realize how valuable you are to this company." I nodded, feeling a rare sense of fulfillment. "Thank you, Peter. I finally feel like I belong here, not just as an assistant, but as a professional." He smiled. "Exactly." As the evening drew to a close, Vanessa approached me one last time. "Emily," she said, "thank you for proving that competence, integrity, and calm under pressure matter. You've earned my respect and my confidence." I smiled, feeling the last lingering tension dissipate. "Thank you, Vanessa. That really means a lot." She nodded, her smile genuine. "I'm glad we started this year on the right note." Walking out of the office that night, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The new year had begun with doubt, tension, and scrutiny, but it was ending with validation, recognition, and respect. I had navigated professional and personal dynamics, survived scrutiny from both Peter and Vanessa, and emerged stronger, more confident, and more secure in my role. And as I stepped into the crisp night air, I realized something important. Challenges, even the ones that feel personal and overwhelming, can lead to growth, recognition, and unexpected alliances. The year ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt ready to face it, confident in myself and secure in my place. More stories will keep coming, so please don't forget to like and subscribe.